The year was 2347, and humanity had finally found its place among the stars. For 300 years, humans had spread across the galaxy, building colonies on 17 different worlds and creating new homes for billions of people who dreamed of a better future beyond Earth. The Galactic Council, a gathering of ancient alien species that had ruled the stars for thousands of years, had finally given humanity a seat at their table. They did this not out of kindness, but because they could no longer ignore how fast these strange creatures from the small blue planet were growing, but not everyone was happy about humanity's rise. The Zorvath Empire had ruled over 2,000 star systems for 10,000 years. Their scales were dark purple, their eyes burned with cold intelligence, and they believed with absolute certainty that they were the supreme species in all of existence. Emperor Zorvath the 12th sat upon his crystal throne and watched the reports of human expansion with growing anger. These insects, these primitive mammals who had only discovered space travel a few centuries ago, were spreading like a disease across the galaxy. They must be taught their place, the Emperor said to his council, his voice like grinding stone. Admiral Kethra Von, the most feared military commander in the Empire, bowed before his master. His scarred face showed no emotion as he received his orders. "Directive 7, my lord," he asked. "Directive 7, the Emperor confirmed, and with those two words, he sealed the fate of billions. The attack came without warning on a peaceful morning. New Shanghai was a thriving colony of 2 billion souls. Families were eating breakfast, children were heading to school, and workers were starting their daily routines when the sky turned red. Zorvath warships dropped out of hyperspace, like a swarm of demons. There were thousands of them, each one carrying enough firepower to destroy a continent. Admiral Von watched from his flagship as the orbital bombardment platforms moved into position. He felt nothing as he gave the order. Begin sterilization. Plasma fire rained from the heavens. Buildings melted like candles, oceans boiled away into steam, and millions of voices screamed in terror before being silenced forever. The attack lasted only 6 hours. When it was over, New Shanghai was nothing but a scorched rock floating in the void. But the Zorvath were not finished. Kepler's hope fell next. It was a world of scientists and dreamers, home to humanity's greatest research centers and universities. 3 billion people lived there, pursuing knowledge and pushing the boundaries of what was possible. They, Zorvath burned it all. Harvest Prime was an agricultural paradise. Its golden fields fed a dozen other colonies, and its people were simple farmers who wanted nothing more than to tend their crops and raise their families. The Zorvath showed them no mercy. In 72 hours, 10 billion human beings were dead. The news reached Earth like a shockwave. People collapsed in the streets, crying out in grief and disbelief. How could this happen? They asked. Why would anyone do something so monstrous? The Galactic Council responded with silence. Some species whispered that it was an unfortunate escalation, while others celebrated quietly, happy to see the upstart humans put in their place. Emperor Zorvath the 12th sent a message to Earth. His image appeared on every screen across the planet. His alien face twisted into what passed for a smile among his kind. "Know your place, insects," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Surrender your remaining worlds and submit to imperial rule, or face complete extinction. You have 30 days to decide." He expected fear. He expected surrender. He expected humanity to grovel at his feet and beg for mercy. He had never been more wrong about anything in his entire life. In Geneva, the leaders of United Earth Command gathered in an underground bunker. The room was filled with generals, admirals, scientists, and politicians. All of them wore the same expression of shock and grief on their faces. President Elena Vasquez stood at the head of the table. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but those eyes had turned to steel. They believe we will break, she said, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. They believe we are weak. She pressed a button and a holographic display lit up the room. It showed every remaining human world, every colony, every space station still under human control. They think of us as insects to be crushed beneath their boots. They think we will surrender, because that is what every other species has done when faced with their power. She looked around the room at the faces of humanity's leaders, but they do not know us. They do not understand what we are capable of when we are pushed to the edge. They do not know that humans do not surrender. Humans do not break. Humans fight. General Marcus Stone rose from his seat. He was a tall man with a shaved head and scars covering half his face. Earned in battles across a dozen worlds. Madam President, I have a plan. I have been working on it for years, hoping we would never need it. But now the time has come. He activated his own display, showing detailed military strategies and weapons designs that made even the hardened officers in the room gasp. I call it Operation Annihilation. The room fell silent as Stone explained his vision. It would require every resource humanity possessed. It would demand sacrifices beyond imagination. It would take years to prepare, but when it was finished, the Zorvith Empire would learn a lesson they would never forget. President Vasquez listened to every word. When Stone finished, she looked around the room. We vote now. All in favor of Operation Annihilation, raise your hand. Every hand in the room went up. Vasquez nodded slowly. Then it begins. Send no response to the Emperor. Let him wonder what we are planning. Let him grow comfortable in his arrogance. She turned to face the holographic display one last time. They killed 10 billion of our people. Our mothers, our fathers, our children. They thought this would break us. Instead, they have awakened something they cannot possibly understand. Her voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the entire room. They wanted to see what humanity is capable of when we have nothing left to lose. Now they will find out. And when we are finished, the entire galaxy will remember this lesson for the rest of time. Outside the bunker, night had fallen over Geneva. But across the planet, lights were coming on in factories that had been dormant for decades. Scientists were being pulled from their beds and rushed to secret facilities. Military officers were receiving encoded orders that made their blood run cold. Humanity was going to war. And this time, there would be no mercy. For 3 years, humanity vanished from the galactic stage. The Zorvith Emperor waited for the surrender that never came. His advisors told him that the humans were simply too shocked to respond, that they needed time to accept their defeat. But as weeks turned into months and months turned into years, even the most confident Zorvith began to feel uneasy. Imperial scouts were sent to the borders of human space. What they found was strange and disturbing. Every human world had gone dark. No communications came in or out. Massive defense platforms surrounded each system, armed with weapons that the scouts could not identify. Any ship that tried to get closer was destroyed without warning. What are they doing in there? Admiral Vaughn asked his intelligence officers. We do not know, my lord. Our sensors detect massive energy signatures, industrial output that should be impossible for such a young species. They appear to be mining entire asteroid belts and dismantling moons for raw materials. Vaughn felt something he had not experienced in centuries. It was a cold feeling in his stomach that he refused to call fear. They are building something. At the Galactic Council, representatives from 100 different species whispered about the human silence. Ambassador Prin of the Velith Collective, a tall being with silver skin and 4 eyes, formally requested an audience with humanity's representatives. Her request was denied with a message containing only 4 words. Humanity is not receiving. The message sent chills through the council chambers. Species that had mocked humanity now exchanged worried glances. Even the Zorvith ambassador seemed less confident than before. What are the humans planning? Someone asked. No one had an answer behind the wall of silence. Earth had transformed into something terrifying. General Marcus Stone had taken command of Operation Annihilation, and he drove humanity forward with an iron will. Every factory on every remaining human world worked around the clock. Every scientist bent their genius toward a single purpose. Every citizen contributed in whatever way they could. The grief had not faded. It had hardened into something stronger. Parents who had lost children on New Shanghai now worked double shifts building weapons. Scientists who had watched their colleagues die on Kepler's hope now created technologies that would have seemed like magic just years before. Farmers from Harvest Prime trained to become soldiers. Yuki Tanaka was one of the brightest minds in human history. She had spent her career studying alien technology, trying to understand how it worked. Now she used that knowledge for war. The Zorva shields operate on a specific frequency, she explained to General Stone, her eyes burning with determination. Every species in the galaxy has tried to overpower those shields with brute force. They all failed because they were thinking about the problem wrong. She held up a small device that pulsed with strange light. We are not going to overpower their shields. We are going to make their shields kill them. This is the Prometheus warhead. When it hits a Zorvith shield, it does not try to break through. Instead, it inverts the shield's energy and turns it inward. Stone stared at the device. You mean? I mean their own defenses will tear their ships apart from the inside. The stronger their shields, the more devastating the explosion. Stone smiled for the first time in 3 years. It was not a pleasant smile. Admiral Chun Weilin was given command of the First Retribution Fleet. She was a small woman with short gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. She had lost her entire family on New Shanghai, including her 2 young daughters. She did not speak about her loss. She did not need to. Everyone who served under her could see it in her eyes. The fleet she commanded was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. 12,000 warships, each one designed from the ground up to kill Zorvith vessels. They were not elegant or beautiful like the ships of other species. They were brutal, ugly things covered in weapons and armor. We are not building ships, Stone told the engineers. We are building instruments of punishment. I want the Zorvith to feel terror when they see our vessels. I want them to know that death has come for them. The engineers delivered exactly what he asked for human soldiers trained in conditions that would have broken any other species. They ran through simulated Zorvith cities until they could navigate them blindfolded. They studied enemy tactics until they knew them better than the Zorvith themselves. They pushed their bodies and minds to the absolute limit. Sergeant James Cooper was one of these soldiers. He was a young man from Earth who had watched the news of the massacre with his family. His mother had collapsed, crying for her sister who had lived on Kepler's Hope. Why? His mother had asked through her tears. Why would anyone do this? James had no answer then, but he made a promise to himself that day. He would make the Zorvith pay for every single life they had taken. Now he trained 18 hours a day, learning to use the new powered armor that made human soldiers into walking tanks. He memorized weak points in Zorvith physiology. He practiced until killing became as natural as breathing. He was not alone. Millions of humans across the remaining worlds prepared themselves for the war to come on the 3rd anniversary of the massacre. Everything was ready. General Stone stood before a massive holographic display showing the entire Zorvith Empire. 2,000 star systems, trillions of enemy citizens, the most powerful military force in the known galaxy. Against them stood humanity. Fewer worlds, fewer soldiers, fewer ships, but humanity had something the Zorvith did not have. They had rage. They had grief. They had the memory of 10 billion voices crying out for justice. Stone addressed his forces through a transmission that reached every human vessel. Every soldier, every pilot. 3 years ago, the Zorvath Empire murdered our people. They killed our children. They burned our worlds. They thought this would make us surrender. His voice was calm and cold. They were wrong. We did not surrender. We prepared, we built, we trained, and now we are ready. He pointed at the holographic display. Out there is an empire that believes it is invincible. They have crushed every enemy they have ever faced. They think we will be no different. A grim smile crossed his face. Today, we teach them how wrong they are. Today, we show them what humanity does to those who harm our people. Today, Operation Annihilation begins across human space. Engines roared to life. Weapons powered up. Soldiers checked their gear one final time. The wall of silence that had protected humanity for 3 years suddenly dropped. And from behind it emerged the most terrifying military force the galaxy had ever seen. Zorvath had wanted to see what humanity was capable of. They were about to find out. The first target was not chosen at random. Kethra Prime was the homeworld of Admiral Vaughn, the monster who had given the order to burn human colonies. It was a beautiful world of purple forests and silver oceans, home to 8 billion Zorvath citizens who had celebrated when news of the human massacre reached them. General Stone wanted them to be the first to understand the consequences of what their admiral had done. The Imperial Defense Fleet stationed at Kethra Prime was 3,000 ships strong. These were veteran crews who had crushed rebellions across the galaxy. Their commander, Admiral Dexan, had never lost a battle in his 200 years of service. When human ships appeared at the edge of the system, Dexan actually laughed. 3,000 of our finest vessels against these primitive apes? He said to his officers. This will be over in minutes. He ordered his fleet to form a defensive line, the same formation that had worked perfectly in 100 previous battles. Massive dreadnoughts at the center, cruisers on the flanks, fighters filling the gaps. The human fleet advanced in silence. No demands for surrender, no attempts at communication. Just 12,000 warships moving forward like a wave of death. Open fire! Dexan commanded. Zorv weapons lit up the void. Plasma cannons, missile batteries, and energy beams all targeted the approaching enemy. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. The Zorvath officers waited for the human ships to explode. Instead, they watched in disbelief as their attacks splashed harmlessly against human shields. Impossible. Dexan shouted. Increase power to weapons. Fire everything. More shots. More misses. The human shields held against everything the Zorvath threw at them, and then the humans fired back. The Prometheus warheads shrieked across space, small and seemingly harmless. When they struck the Zorvath shields, the effect was immediate and horrifying. Admiral Lexon watched as his flagship shields turned bright white, then collapsed inward. The energy that was supposed to protect his ship instead tore it apart from the inside. Explosions ripped through every deck as the inverted shield energy destroyed everything it touched. Across the defensive line, the same thing happened to ship after ship. Vessels that had survived countless battles now died in seconds. Crews who had felt invincible now screamed in terror as their own defenses killed them. The battle lasted 4 minutes. 4 minutes to destroy 3,000 Zorvath warships. 4 minutes to shatter the myth of Imperial invincibility. 4 minutes to announce to the galaxy that humanity had come for revenge. Admiral Vaughn received the news in his palace on the planet below. He had been enjoying a victory celebration, still proud of his massacre 3 years earlier. Admiral, his aide said, voice trembling. The defense fleet is gone. What do you mean gone? Destroyed, sir, all of it. In 4 minutes, Vaughn felt his legs weaken. This was not possible. The humans were supposed to be primitive. They were supposed to be broken. They were not supposed to be able to do this. He ran to the command center and watched as human ships took positions in orbit above his world. Landing craft began descending through the atmosphere, each one carrying soldiers who had trained for years for this exact moment. Captain Sarah Okonkwo commanded the assault on the orbital defense platforms. Her ship, the uneasy Vengeance, had been named by its crew in honor of those who died on New Shanghai. Sarah had grown up on New Shanghai. She had been off-world when the attack happened, visiting family on Earth. She returned to find her home turned to ash, everyone she had ever known dead. Now she stared at the orbital platforms through her viewport. They were the same model that had rained fire on her world. The same platforms that had killed her parents, her friends, her neighbors. All weapons. Target the nearest platform, she ordered, her voice ice cold. Captain, should we attempt to take prisoners? Sarah's answer came without hesitation. Negative. For New Shanghai, her crew echoed the words as their weapons fired. For New Shanghai, the platforms exploded one by one. Each explosion was a small act of justice. Each death paid a tiny fraction of the debt the Zorvith owed on the ground. Sergeant James Cooper was among the first humans to set foot on Zorvith soil. His powered armor made him 8 feet tall and strong enough to punch through walls. His weapons could tear through enemy soldiers like paper, but he did not attack civilians. That was not who humans were. They were not here to commit genocide. They were here to destroy the power structure that had ordered the massacre. Military bases fell within hours. Zorvith soldiers who had laughed at news of human deaths now ran in terror from the armored demons that hunted them through their own streets. Those who surrendered were taken prisoner. Those who fought were killed without mercy. Government buildings were next. Every office, every archive, every statue celebrating imperial conquest was reduced to rubble. The symbols of Zorvith power were erased one by one. Admiral Vaughn tried to escape. He commandeered a shuttle and attempted to flee the planet. Human fighters intercepted him before he reached orbit. He was brought before General Stone in chains. The human commander looked at the monster who had killed 10 billion people and felt nothing but cold satisfaction. You thought we would surrender, Stone said. You thought we would accept our destruction quietly. Vaughn said nothing. His arrogance had finally abandoned him. Your homeworld has fallen. Your fleet is destroyed. And this is only the beginning. Stone turned away from the defeated admiral and activated a transmission that would be broadcast across all of Zorvith space. His face appeared on every screen in the Empire. In palaces and factories, in military bases and civilian homes, every Zorvith citizen saw the human general staring at them with eyes full of cold fury. Admiral Vaughn is our prisoner. Kethra Prime is under human control. This is not conquest. This is consequence. He paused to let his words sink in. 3 years ago, you celebrated the death of 10 billion humans. You call this insects. You thought you had broken us. You were wrong. His voice dropped to a whisper that somehow seemed louder than any shout. We are coming for all of you. Every world that supported the massacre. Every leader who celebrated our suffering. Every soldier who followed orders to kill our people. You will all answer for what was done. He leaned closer to the camera. And unlike you, we will not stop. We will not show mercy. We will not rest until justice is served. The transmission ended across the Zorvith Empire. For the first time in 10,000 years, citizens felt something they had only ever inflicted on others: fear. News of Kethra Prime's fall spread across the galaxy like wildfire in the chambers of the Galactic Council. Representatives from 100 different species watched the footage in stunned silence. They saw human warships tearing through Zorvith defenses. They saw the mighty Imperial fleet reduced to burning wreckage in mere minutes. They saw the face of General Stone delivering his message of vengeance. Ambassador Prin of the Velith Collective was the first to speak. This changes everything. She was right. For 10,000 years, the Zorvith Empire had been the dominant power in the galaxy. They had conquered species, crushed rebellions, and ruled with an iron fist. No one had ever challenged them successfully until now. The Zorvith ambassador stormed into the council chambers, his purple scales flushed with anger and fear. The council must intervene. These humans are savages. They must be stopped. Stopped? Replied Ambassador Crix of the insectoid Vren. 3 years ago, when the Empire murdered 10 billion humans, we asked the council to intervene. Do you remember what happened? The Zorvith ambassador said nothing. Nothing happened, Crix continued, his mandibles clicking with barely contained rage. The council did nothing. You faced no consequences. You were allowed to continue as if genocide was acceptable. Other ambassadors nodded in agreement. Many of them represented species that had suffered under Zorvith rule. They had been forced to watch in silence as the Empire crushed anyone who opposed them. Now they watched something different. They watched the Empire being crushed. Instead, Emperor Zorvith XII sat in his throne room, receiving report after report of disaster. Human forces were advancing on multiple fronts. System after system was falling. His generals could not explain how the humans were winning so easily. They should not be able to do this. The Emperor shouted, "They are primitive. Their technology was centuries behind ours." "Was, my lord," his advisor said quietly. "It appears they have made remarkable advances in the 3 years since the attack." The Emperor demanded to see the recordings from the Battle of Kethra Prime. He watched as Prometheus warheads turned his own ship's shields against them. He watched as human soldiers in powered armor swept through Zorvith defenses like ghosts. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" His advisor had no answer. The Emperor decided to try diplomacy. Surely the humans could be reasoned with. Surely they would accept some kind of peace agreement. He sent his finest diplomat to negotiate with the human commanders. Admiral Chen Wei-Lin agreed to receive him. The Zorvith diplomat entered the human flagship, expecting to see barbarians. Instead, he found himself in a clean, efficient command center filled with officers who radiated quiet competence. Admiral Chen sat at the center of the room, her gray eyes studying the diplomat like a predator studying prey. The Emperor offers a full apology for the unfortunate events of 3 years ago. The diplomat began. He is prepared to offer substantial reparations and territory in exchange for peace. Chun's expression did not change. Unfortunate events? The, conflict with your colonial worlds. You mean the genocide, Chun said flatly. The deliberate murder of 10 billion men, women, and children. The diplomat shifted uncomfortably. The Emperor wishes to move forward, to build a new relationship between our peoples. Chun stood and walked toward the viewport. Outside, her fleet stretched as far as the eye could see. Thousands of warships waiting for her orders. You offered us extinction, she said without turning around. We declined. Now we offer you the same courtesy, but surely there must be some way. There is not. Chun finally turned to face the diplomat. Her eyes held nothing but cold determination. Tell your emperor this. We did not start this war. We did not want this war. But we will finish it. Every world that celebrated our suffering will answer for it. Every leader who allowed the massacre will face justice. This is not negotiable. The diplomat returned to the emperor with nothing desperate. Zorvith XII tried to rally his vassal species. The empire ruled over dozens of other civilizations that had been conquered over the millennia. Surely they would fight to protect their masters. But centuries of cruelty had earned the empire no loyalty. The Cathari Confederation had been subjugated by the Zorvith 800 years ago. Their people had been used as slave labor, their resources stripped, their culture suppressed. When human commanders made contact with them, they did not hesitate. Cathari saboteurs began destroying Zor's supply lines. Cargo ships carrying weapons and fuel mysteriously exploded. Military communications were intercepted and passed to human intelligence. The Vrin, the insectoid species whose ambassador had spoken at the council, went even further. They provided humanity with detailed maps of imperial defenses, codes for military installations, and information about Zorvath weaknesses. We have waited centuries for someone to challenge the Empire, Ambassador Crix told General Stone through a secret channel. We will help you destroy them. Similar offers came from a dozen other species. The Zorvath had spent 10,000 years making enemies. Now those enemies saw their chance for revenge by the fourth year of the war. Human forces had captured 340 Zorvath worlds. The Imperial military, once the terror of the galaxy, had been systematically dismantled. Human scientists continued developing new weapons that defied known physics. Singularity bombs that created miniature black holes to swallow entire fleets. Nanite swarms that could devour space stations from within. Viral programs that shut down Zorvath computer systems. But the most terrifying weapon was the human soldiers themselves, Zorv. Veterans who survived battles against the humans spoke of them with trembling voices. They told stories of humans who kept fighting even with wounds that should have killed them. Of units that advanced through artillery fire without slowing. Of soldiers who seemed to feel no fear, no hesitation, no doubt. They are not normal creatures, one captured general whispered. When you look into their eyes, you see something beyond anger. You see absolute certainty. They know they will win. They know we cannot stop them. Another prisoner put it more simply. They are not soldiers. They are vengeance made flesh. The Emperor watched his empire crumble and could not understand how everything had gone so wrong. 3 years ago, he had ordered the extermination of a minor species to teach the galaxy a lesson instead. He had taught humanity a lesson they would never forget. He had taught them that the universe was cruel and that mercy was weakness, and now they were teaching him the same lesson in return. Zorvath Prime was the heart of the Empire. For 10,000 years, it had been the seat of imperial power. The planet was covered in magnificent cities built from crystal and gold. Ancient temples honored the Zorvath gods. The imperial palace rose above everything else, a monument to the glory of a species that believed it was destined to rule the galaxy forever. Now it was the last stronghold of a dying empire. Every remaining Zorvath warship had been called home to defend the capital. 5,000 vessels formed a defensive sphere around the planet, their crews knowing that this was the final battle. If they failed here, everything would be lost. Emperor Zorvath the 12th watched from his throne room as the human fleet approached. The enemy ships numbered nearly 8,000, each one covered in weapons and carrying soldiers hungry for justice. The Emperor had refused all suggestions that he flee. This was his world, his throne, his legacy. He would defend it or die trying. We have 10,000 years of history behind us, he said to his generals. We are the supreme species in this galaxy. We will not fall to these insects. But even as he spoke, doubt gnawed at his heart. He had seen the reports. He had watched recording after recording of his forces being destroyed. These humans were not the primitive creatures he had dismissed 3 years ago. They were something else entirely. Admiral Chen Weilin commanded the human assault from her flagship, the uneasy Remembrance. She had named it herself, choosing a word that captured everything humanity was fighting for. All ships. This is Admiral Chen, she said through the fleet-wide channel. This is the final battle. Beyond that fleet lies the homeworld of our enemy, the palace of the monster who ordered the deaths of 10 billion of our people. She paused, letting her words sink in. Some of you lost family on New Shanghai. Some of you lost friends on Kepler's Hope. All of you carry the weight of what was done to us. Today, we honor their memory. Today, we finish what they started. Today, Operation Annihilation reaches its conclusion. Her voice hardened. No retreat. No surrender. no mercy. For those we lost, 8,000 voices echoed back through the communication channels. For those we lost, the battle began. West opened fire first, filling space with enough energy to destroy a small moon. Human shields held against the onslaught as the fleet advanced relentlessly forward. Then, the humans returned fire. Prometheus warheads streaked through the void, finding their targets with terrible precision. Zorvith ships that had survived centuries of warfare died in seconds as their own shields betrayed them. Explosions lit up the darkness like new stars being born, but the Zorvith fought back with everything they had. They knew this was their last chance. They knew that defeat meant the end of everything their species had built. Human ships began taking damage. Shields failed. Hulls ruptured. Crews died at their stations. Captain Sarah Okonkwo's ship, the UE's Vengeance, took a direct hit that killed half her crew. She kept fighting, directing her remaining weapons against enemy vessels, even as her ship fell apart around her. For New Shanghai, she whispered, as her ship's reactor went critical. Sergeant James Cooper was aboard one of the landing craft heading for the planet's surface. His unit was tasked with taking the Imperial Palace. Around him, other soldiers checked their weapons and armor one final time. 30 seconds to landing, the pilot announced. James looked at the faces of his fellow Marines. They were young and old, men and women, people from every corner of remaining human space. They had all lost someone in the massacre. They had all trained for years for this moment. The landing craft hit the ground hard. The doors opened, and James charged out into a storm of enemy fire. Zorvith soldiers waited in prepared positions, their weapons blazing. But they had never faced anything like human Marines in powered armor. James moved through their defenses like a force of nature, his weapons cutting down anyone who stood in his way, building street by street. The humans advanced toward the palace. The battle in space raged for 30 days. Millions died on both sides. The void around Zorvith Prime became a graveyard of shattered ships and frozen bodies. But slowly, inevitably, the human fleet pushed forward. Admiral Chun refused to leave her command post even as the Remembrance took hit after hit. She had made a promise to herself that she would see this through to the end. She would be there when the Emperor answered for what he had done. Finally, the last Zorvith warship fell. The defensive fleet was destroyed. The path to the planet lay open on the surface. Human Marines breached the walls of the Imperial Palace. Zorvith guards fought to the last. But nothing could stop the tide of armored soldiers pouring through the corridors. Sergeant Cooper was among the first to reach the throne room. The Emperor sat alone on his crystal throne. His guards were dead. His advisors had fled. His empire had crumbled around him. He looked at the humans surrounding him with something between hatred and disbelief. How? He asked, how did you do this? You were supposed to be primitive. You were supposed to be weak. General Stone stepped forward. He had come down to the surface personally for this moment. We were never weak, Stone said. You simply never bothered to understand us. The Emperor expected death. He assumed the humans would execute him as he had executed billions of their people. Part of him even welcomed it, but Stone had something different in mind. He activated a holographic display. Images began appearing in the air around them. Faces, names, dates. Each one representing a human who had died in the massacre. 10 billion, Stone said. 10 billion people. Children who never grew up. Parents who never came home. Dreams that were never fulfilled. You took all of that from us. The images kept scrolling. Faces of every age and ethnicity. Humans from every colony that had been destroyed. You will not die today, Stone continued. Death would be too easy, too merciful. He stepped closer to the throne. Instead, you will watch. Every name, every face. You will sit here powerless and alone, and you will witness what you destroyed. And when it finally ends, you will live out the rest of your miserable existence as a prisoner, knowing that your empire is gone, your legacy is ash, and your name will be remembered only as a warning to others. The emperor tried to protest, but human soldiers seized him and forced him to watch as the parade of faces continued. It took 6 months to display all 10 billion names. The war was over. President Vasquez addressed the Galactic Council. She stood where humanity's first representative had stood centuries ago, but now she spoke from a position of absolute power. We did not want war. We wanted only to exist among you, to trade, to learn, to grow together. You answered our outstretched hand with genocide. Her eyes swept across the assembled ambassadors. Some cowered. Others nodded in respect. Let this be the lesson the galaxy remembers. Humanity does not seek vengeance lightly. But when we are wronged, truly wronged, we do not stop. We do not forgive. And we do not forget. The Zorvath Empire was dissolved. Its military was dismantled. Its vassal species were freed. Its territory was divided among those who had suffered under its rule a century later. Humanity led the Galactic Coalition, a democratic union built on mutual respect rather than domination. The memorial on Earth's moon bore 10 billion names etched in stone that would endure for eternity, and in schools across 1,000 worlds. Children learned the lesson of the Zorvath War. Some species are not prey. Some species, when pushed, push back harder than the universe can imagine. Humanity was one such species, and they never let the galaxy forget it.